Hello, everyone. Representative Josh Turek here. First and foremost, I want to say that I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you. I really wanted to be there in person and join you. Unfortunately, as is the very nature of being a politician, I'm up for re-election and unfortunately had some other obligations here in district that I need to do if I want to continue in my role and in my capacity. So I hope you all are enjoying this day here to celebrate the 34th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. For those of you that don't know me, again, my name is Josh Turek. I'm a freshman state representative of Iowa. I'm the first ever permanently disabled member of the Iowa House and unfortunately, only one of us to represent out of 150, the 15% of the population that contains a disability. But I hope that there are a few of you out there that will join me. And I was born in Council Bluffs, Iowa. I was born with a condition called spina bifida. I had 21 surgeries by the age of 12, struggled a lot. Grew up to a large family. We were poor and enormous amount of adversity to overcome, both with disabilities and also the economic adversity to overcome. Thankfully for me, at the age of 11 years old, I was exposed to wheelchair basketball at a camp. And actually, it was strange enough, this week was this camp, the Omaha area adaptive sports camp for kids. It was amazing, actually, to go back to where it all began for me, to be able to talk to the kids and see them and hopefully give them some level of hope and inspiration, and to make sure that they know that there's no glass ceiling on them, that their disability doesn't define them. But what happened for me is I was exposed to wheelchair basketball. I come from a very competitive sports family. Both my brother and sister played professional basketball, and that was the first time that I had ever had the opportunity to perform and play basketball against my peers. And I fell in love with the sport and dedicated myself to it. I was good enough that I ended up getting a opportunity for a college scholarship to play at Southwest Minnesota State University. I went there and played quite well, scored 4,000 points, and had the opportunity to go play professional wheelchair basketball in Italy. And for the majority of my adult life, that's what I've done. I've played professional wheelchair basketball around the world. Along with that, I was able to perform at the pinnacle of my sport, which, strange enough and serendipitously enough, yesterday on Friday was the opening of the Olympics. I was able to compete in 4 Paralympics and represent the United States in 4 Paralympic Games. These are actually the medals behind me, and to win 2 gold medals. The gold medal there, that is from my last time I competed in Tokyo, and then from Rio, and then from the bronze medal, that's from 2012 in London. And it was after I finished my basketball career, I knew that I wanted to give back. I'd always been involved in nonprofits for disabled, particularly for adaptive sports for kids. I wanted to be able to give back. I knew the profound impact that adaptive sports had made on my life. I wanted to be able to give back that to the next generation. And so I finished my master's degree, and then along with that, I ended up taking an exam called ATP, Assistive Technology Professional, ATP. And I started working for a company called New Motion, and I was assessing and providing wheelchairs for the disabled. I thought there needs to be more people that had an intimate familiarity with the equipment. And in doing so, I was finding that I was working with muscular dystrophy in particular and ALS, and I was finding that the denial rates for power wheelchairs and wheelchairs, adaptive equipment, was just off the charts. And I did a little bit of research and came to find out that in Iowa, since we had moved to the managed care organization model, our denial rates we were showing were between 850 and 1,000% higher than what they previously were. And I thought, why is this happening? This is unjust. Sure enough, I came to find out that there had never been a member of the Iowa House with permanent disabilities. And I thought, well, here we are, 15% of the population with no voice, no opportunities. And so I decided to run. I looked at myself in the mirror and said, well, that person's got to be me. And I went out and for 6 months, as I'm doing right now, back again in campaigning, I went out and I knocked doors every single day. I knocked every single door in my, crawling up the stairs. And if those of you that have been to Council Bluffs, it's called Bluffs for a reason, lots of hills, lots of stairs, dragging my wheelchair up there. And ended up winning my election by a grand total of 6 votes, one of the closest elections in Iowa history, outperforming the top of the ticket by about 14 percentage points. And I'm incredibly proud to be the sole representative for our community. Unfortunately, there is far too much that needs to be done, which leads us to today, the celebration of the ADA. I'm old enough to remember I was 10 years old when the ADA ended up coming about. I remember being in first grade and being put in the remedial reading classes just because I was with a disability. I remember not having access to many public places, including the public library. And even within my own public school, I remember all the sidewalks not being accessible. I've also, because as I said, I've played wheelchair basketball around the world for the majority of my adult life. I've seen firsthand the differences in good public policy and bad public policy. I've been to countries where they had no ADA and individuals with disabilities are essentially just stranded, no freedom of mobility, no ability for education, no actual ability for employment. The American with Disabilities Act, honestly, was not only a Bill of Rights for those of us in the disabled population, but it was truly our Emancipation Proclamation. It opened up all of the doors for us. And for those of us that are Iowans, we should be enormously proud of this because, as most of us here know, the primary sponsor for this bill is my friend and honestly political hero. He's one of the few reasons why I've gotten involved in this, and one of the reasons why I would define myself as a prairie populist and a Democrat is because of Iowa Senator Tom Harkin. The work that he did, all of us are internally grateful. And it goes even further back than that. It goes back to the work of Judy Heumann and the work of the original disability advocates and their work with 504. We owe a lot to these individuals. I feel like we're sitting on the shoulders of giants, as you would say. If it wasn't for the work first of 504 and then with the work of the ADA, every time I see Senator Harkin, I say thank you, not only on behalf of the disabled population, but for myself. If it wasn't for the work of the ADA, I never would have the I would never have the opportunities with employment or with education or even just freedom of mobility to be able to live the life that I've been able to live. And certainly there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that if it was not for the work of the ADA and Senator Harkin, I would never be in the role that I'm in right now. I would never be a state legislator representing my community and representing all of you and the disabled population here in Iowa. All of us are incredibly grateful to this piece of landmark legislation. And honestly, I say it's the gold standard in what bipartisan policy should be. The ability to change people's lives and improve people's lives through policy. I had a really unique opportunity last week, actually, as a part of the celebration for the 34th anniversary for the ADA. I was able to sit next to Senator Harkin and his wife, Ruth, to watch the movie Crip Camp. And for those of you that haven't seen it, it's an incredible film about the original disability advocates out in California, their camp that they experienced, which I felt a very similar story with myself with how I began with my disability camp. I really struggled enormously in life. Before my exposure to wheelchair basketball and before the going to that camp, I really had no self-esteem. I had no friends. I'd been ostracized. It was really going there that I finally felt a sense of community, gave me a self-esteem, gave me a purpose. And so I was watching the story of the Crip Camp and how they ended up going from that camp and ultimately the work of Judy Heumann and all of the other campers and the first disability work the first disability advocacy work that they did. And it was absolutely incredible. The sit-ins that they had, the blocking of the streets, it was just amazing. And I was so inspired. And I had the amazing opportunity to be able to watch that film sitting right next to Senator Harkin and his wife, Ruth. And I remember even tapping him on the leg as later in the film they moved from 504 into the work with the American with Disabilities Act, and it was it was something that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life, because it's because of the work that they have done that I am here. And as I said, I feel like I'm sitting on the shoulders of giants, and I feel like now I'm carrying that flag of Judy and of Senator Harkin, and continuing the work forward that the American with Disabilities Act did. As we know, the American with Disabilities Act, it gave us an access ramp to society. It gave us the ability to go into public buildings, into businesses, and access to bathrooms, and gave us all of this amazing opportunity. But there's still a lot of work to be done. We all recognize this. We all know this. There's a lot of work to be done with healthcare, with our employment numbers, still with access, with overcoming stigma. And that is what I am fighting for. And what I want to leave you with is that as much work as there is to be done, and I'm fighting for it. I'm fighting for my Work Without Worry bill, for MEPD employment, so that we can actually raise the income and asset limits so people can keep their health care. There's been some things, even though I'm in the minority party, and even though I've only been a legislator for 2 years, there's been some things that we've been able to get accomplished. And I'm ever an optimist, and I want to leave you with some optimism and with some hope. One of the things that we were able to do was to be able to get a bill passed to be able to expand the access to individuals with disabilities in our public parks and our public lands. A really, really good piece of legislation, because our public lands are all of our lands, and it should be accessible to all of us. I'm very proud of that bill. Another bill that we were able to do is I actually wrote an amendment in a very bipartisan fashion to provide protections for the service dogs to landlords. They're trying to rail in some of the regulation on the emotional support animals, but within that, we need to make sure that we keep those protections for these service dogs, which are specifically for those with disabilities, and the dog is trained, or in very rare circumstances, the small pony. And that is performing a task. I was very, very proud to be able to write that amendment that became law to keep the protections for our service dogs. And most recently, and this just took place, is for those of you who were following the Iowa legislature this year, maybe the two bills that I was fighting the hardest for was my Work Without Worry bill, to be able to increase the limits on income and assets. But the other one was a right to repair, which many, many other states have moved to, which is currently in Iowa. You need a doctor visit and a face-to-face and a prescription just to be able to get a wheelchair repair. Many states like Minnesota and others around us have moved away from this model because it's unnecessary. It's an unnecessary burden to add a transportation burden to individuals with disabilities that already have a piece of equipment. That this was delaying all of us in the disabled population, as we know, if you've gone through it, weeks, if not months, to wait for the doctor, to go through the paperwork, to wait for the prior authorization. It was unjust and unnecessary. Well, I'm very pleased to tell you that that is no longer the standard here in Iowa. We got that bill through unanimously through the House, but Iowa Medicaid actually recognized that that was something that needed to be done, that this was unjust, this was the right thing to do. And so starting July the 1st, they actually changed almost exactly the way that we had written the bill, right to repair is done. So what I want to leave you with is that representation matters, advocacy matters. And I want to use this 35th anniversary of the ADA to look back with great amount of admiration and gratitude for what had previously come before in the work of Judy Heumann and the work of Senator Harkin and all of us to be able to get us here. But it is now on us. The American with Disabilities Act provided us a ramp to society. Now we need to use that access ramp to be able to make our voice heard. That's 15% of the population. We need to do a better job of self-advocating, of getting involved in government at the city and the state, the local and the federal level, getting involved. We need to make our voice heard. We have the ability, our disabled population, to change the outcome of any election, and we have to do so. So that is my call to you. Again, thank you all. I hope you have a great time. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. Again, happy 34th anniversary of the American with Disabilities Act, and let's use this moment to go forward to continue to work for change, progress, and justice. Thank you all.